Make sure that body cam is recording, officer. The words were quiet, almost too calm for the courthouse hallway, but they cut through the morning noise like a judge's gavel. Officer Ryan Caldwell stood in front of the security checkpoint with one hand on a stack of sealed court files and the other resting near the camera clipped to his chest. The red light blinked once, twice, catching the cold reflection of the marble floor. In front of him stood Naomi Brooks, a black woman in a plain charcoal coat, low heels, and a neat bun pulled tight at the back of her head. She did not look frightened. That seemed to bother him more than anything. Around them, the courthouse was waking up in its usual rhythm. Attorneys balancing coffee cups, clerks rushing toward elevators, deputies checking IDs, the faint squeak of polished shoes moving across stone. But now everyone had slowed down. A silence spread from the checkpoint to the glass doors, thin at first, then heavy. Ryan lifted one of the folders and saw the red stamp across the front, sealed. His jaw tightened. "You want to explain why you're walking around with restricted court documents?" he asked. Naomi's eyes moved from the folder to his badge. "Because I'm authorized to carry them." He let out a short laugh, the kind that invited the hallway to laugh with him. No one did. Authorized by who? Naomi held her breath for half a second, not out of fear, but control. She had learned years ago that people often mistook calm for weakness until the record proved otherwise. "Call the clerk's office," she said. "Ask for Samuel Reed. He can verify access under docket review." Ryan's smile flattened. That's a lot of fancy words for somebody who came through the public entrance. A woman in a navy suit paused near the elevators. A young clerk looked up from his tablet. Naomi felt the old familiar heat rise beneath her collar. Not anger exactly, but recognition. The shape of the moment. The assumption arriving before the question. The suspicion placed on her body before her name was even spoken. She kept her hands visible, her voice low. "Officer Caldwell, those files are not to be opened in the hallway." His eyes sharpened when she said his name. "Don't tell me how to do my job." He stepped closer, blocking the path to the elevators. "Turn around." The hallway seemed to lose air. Naomi looked past him, toward courtroom 4, where a brass plaque caught the pale morning light. Her hearing was scheduled in less than an hour. His hearing. Only he did not know that yet. "This is a mistake," she said. "No," Ryan answered, reaching for his cuffs with a confidence that felt practiced. "This is procedure." The metal closed around her wrists without drama, but the sound still carried. A soft, final click. One folder slipped from his grip and scattered across the floor, pages fanning out beneath the shoes of stunned attorneys. The young clerk's face went pale as he saw the cover sheet lying open near the base of the security table. "Officer Ryan Caldwell, pattern review hearing." Naomi looked at the blinking red light on his chest and said nothing. Then the elevator doors opened behind him. The elevator doors parted with a soft chime, and for one suspended second, every face in the hallway turned toward the brushed steel opening. Naomi did not turn right away. Her wrists rested together in front of her, the metal cuffs colder than the morning air that had followed her in from the courthouse steps. She could feel the faint pulse under her skin where the cuffs pressed too tightly, but she kept her shoulders straight. That was something her mother had taught her long before law school, long before the black robe, long before anyone called her Your Honor. Stand like your name matters, even when they refuse to ask for it. 30 minutes earlier, Naomi Brooks had parked 2 blocks away because the courthouse garage was already full. She had walked through the downtown chill carrying a leather satchel on one shoulder and a banker box of files in both arms, careful not to let the sealed folders slide in the wind. The city smelled like wet pavement, burnt coffee, and exhaust from buses groaning along the curb. Her phone had buzzed twice with messages from St. Catherine Hospital, where her mother had spent the night under observation after another breathing scare. Naomi had read the first message at a red light, then locked the screen before worry could pull her apart. Stable. Resting. Call after rounds. Those 3 words were enough to keep her moving. She had slept less than 4 hours in 2 days, but the hearing could not wait. The files she carried were not ordinary case documents. They were complaints, statements, dash camera logs, body camera transcripts, and internal review notes tied to a pattern of courthouse detentions that had gone unexplained for too long. Some names appeared once. Officer Ryan Caldwell's appeared again and again, tucked into reports like a stain nobody wanted to name. Naomi had been assigned to supervise the review because she was precise, patient, and almost impossible to intimidate. People who disliked her called that cold. People who knew her understood it was discipline. She had grown up in a small apartment on the south side of Richmond, where her mother worked night shifts as a nurse and still came home with enough tenderness to braid Naomi's hair before school. Her father, a public defender with tired eyes and a soft voice, used to bring home old casebooks from the county library. Naomi had learned early that paper could carry a life inside it. A signature could save someone. A missing line could bury them. That was why she never treated files like paper. They were people flattened into ink. In the hallway now, she watched one of those files lying open near the security table, its pages exposed to strangers who had suddenly forgotten how to breathe. Officer Caldwell followed the clerk's gaze and glanced down. He saw his own name, but not enough to understand it. Not yet. Naomi finally looked toward the elevator. Chief Judge Margaret Ellison had not stepped out. Not yet. Only an empty elevator waited, humming faintly, its lights bright and indifferent. Ryan mistook the pause for fear. "Keep moving," he said. Naomi lifted her chin just enough for the body camera to catch her face clearly. "Officer Caldwell," she said, voice even. "From this moment forward, every choice you make will matter." Ryan Caldwell heard the warning, but pride turned it into noise before it could reach his conscience. He stepped around the fallen pages as if they were nothing more than spilled mail, then guided Naomi toward the side corridor beside the security desk. The hallway narrowed there, away from the public entrance, away from the attorneys and clerks now staring with the frozen politeness of people who knew something was wrong but did not want to be the first to say it. Ryan liked that silence. He had built a career inside it. For 11 years, his uniform had opened doors, ended arguments, and made nervous people lower their eyes. He knew which prosecutors laughed at his jokes, which deputies owed him favors, which supervisors preferred quick reports over uncomfortable questions. Inside the courthouse, he moved like a man who believed the building belonged to him simply because he guarded its doors. His badge was polished so clean it caught the fluorescent light in hard flashes. His boots made clipped sounds against the tile. His voice stayed calm because calm made orders sound lawful, even when they were only suspicion dressed up as control. "You walked in carrying sealed documents without presenting credentials," he said, loud enough for the people behind them to hear. "That gives me probable cause." Naomi looked at the pale wall ahead of her, where framed portraits of retired judges watched from behind glass. Most were older white men. A few women. One black judge from nearly 20 years ago, his photograph fading at the edges. "I presented my name and asked you to verify access," she said. "You refused." Ryan gave a small smile. People say a lot of things when they get caught. The words were smooth, practiced, almost bored. That was what unsettled her most. Not the cuffs, not the hallway, the ease. This was not a moment that had surprised him. It was a role he knew by heart. At the end of the corridor, two deputies glanced up from a desk. One of them, a younger man named Lewis, opened his mouth as if to ask a question, then closed it when Ryan looked at him. "Processing room," Ryan said. Lewis hesitated. "For court files." Ryan's eyes hardened. "For unauthorized possession." The younger deputy looked at Naomi, then away. Naomi noticed everything. The slight tremor in Lewis's fingers, the camera dome in the corner, the fact that Ryan had shifted his shoulder to angle his body cam away from her face. Details mattered. Details became testimony. Beyond the frosted glass door, the courthouse changed sounds. The public noise faded into the hum of vents, radio static, and the distant rattle of keys. Ryan signed a clipboard with quick strokes. "Name?" he asked, though she had already given it. Naomi turned her head slowly. "Naomi Brooks." His pen stopped for half a beat. Something flickered across his face, not recognition, not yet, but irritation at the confidence in her voice. He wrote the name down anyway, pressing so hard the paper dented beneath the ink. Then he looked up and said, "Occupation?" Naomi held his gaze. "You should verify that before you write another word." Ryan's pen hovered over the occupation line, waiting for Naomi to make herself smaller. She could feel the room watching through half-open doors and lowered eyes. The processing area was no bigger than a courthouse conference room, with pale walls, a laminate counter, two plastic chairs, and a clock that clicked too loudly above the filing cabinet. Everything smelled faintly of copier toner, old coffee, and winter coats drying under fluorescent lights. Naomi took one slow breath. Officer Caldwell, she said, before you continue, I am requesting that you contact the clerk's office, confirm my access through the sealed docket registry, and preserve all video from the checkpoint, the East Corridor, and this room. Deputy Lewis looked up sharply. Ryan's mouth tightened. You do not get to make requests right now. I am not making a request as a favor, Naomi replied. I am stating the procedure you are required to follow when sealed court materials are involved. The calmness of her voice changed the air. It did not rise. It did not shake. It simply stood where fear was supposed to stand, and Ryan did not know what to do with that. He leaned back, studying her coat, her shoes, the plain leather satchel placed on the counter beside the confiscated files. You sound like you practiced that. Naomi looked at the satchel. Her judicial credentials were inside, in the inner pocket, where she had placed them after leaving the hospital parking garage before sunrise. She could tell him. She could end it now. One sentence, one card, one name spoken with the full weight of her office. But she had already seen enough to understand something larger was unfolding. If he would do this to her in a courthouse, under cameras, with sealed documents in his hands, what had he done to people who had no title to reveal and no courtroom waiting behind them? I need my satchel opened by a supervisor, she said. Not by you. Ryan gave a thin laugh. Now you are giving orders? No, Naomi said. I am protecting the chain of custody. The phrase landed harder than he expected. Lewis shifted in his chair. A radio murmured somewhere down the hall. Ryan looked at the younger deputy, then back at Naomi. Lewis, step outside. Lewis hesitated. Sir, should I call upstairs first? Ryan's stare cut the question short. I said step outside. The deputy rose slowly, but as he passed Naomi, his eyes flicked toward the files on the counter. He had seen the name on the cover. He had seen Ryan ignore it. Naomi noticed the glance and stored it away like evidence. When the door closed, Ryan moved to the counter and turned one folder toward himself. Let us see what you were so eager to protect. Naomi's voice sharpened for the first time. Do not open that file. His hand paused. Not because he obeyed her, but because the words carried authority before he understood where it came from. You really think you can tell me what to touch? He asked. Naomi met his eyes. That folder is sealed by court order. If you open it without authorization, your mistake becomes misconduct. Silence filled the room so completely that even the clock seemed louder. Ryan's face changed, not with doubt, but with resentment. He reached toward his body camera, thumb brushing the side button. Naomi looked directly at it. Leave it on, she said. The record is the only thing in this room that does not care who you think I am. Ryan's thumb stayed on the side of the body camera for 1 second too long. Then the red light vanished. The room did not change, but Naomi felt the temperature drop in a way no thermostat could explain. The vent above them kept breathing cold air across the ceiling. The clock kept clicking. The sealed folder remained half turned on the counter, its red stamp bright beneath the fluorescent lights. Ryan lowered his hand as if nothing had happened. Technical issue, he said. Naomi looked at the dark camera lens on his chest. Say that again for the hallway camera. His face hardened. For the first time, the confidence in him looked less like certainty and more like calculation. He walked to the desk, opened a blank incident form, and began writing with fast, sharp strokes. Subject refused to identify herself, he said aloud. Subject became verbally combative. Subject attempted to interfere with officer review of restricted materials. Naomi listened to each sentence fall into the room like dirt being shoveled over the truth. She did not interrupt. Her father used to tell her that lies were easiest to break when they were allowed to finish speaking. Ryan glanced up, annoyed by her silence. Nothing to add. I have already identified myself, she said. I requested verification. I objected to the mishandling of sealed files. I asked that video be preserved. And you turned off your body camera after I said the word misconduct. His pen stopped. Careful. Naomi met his stare. I am being careful. That is why I remember everything. Outside the door, footsteps slowed. A shadow passed behind the frosted glass, then another. Ryan noticed and raised his voice. You know, this is what always happens. Somebody thinks a few legal words can scare a badge. The phrase was not loud, but it carried the weight of every assumption he had brought into the courthouse that morning. Naomi felt the sting of it, not on her skin, but somewhere older, deeper, where a lifetime of narrowed eyes and locked doors had settled. Still, her voice did not break. "A badge is not supposed to be scared," she said. "It is supposed to be accountable." Ryan pushed back from the desk. The chair legs scraped against the floor, sudden and ugly in the small room. He picked up her satchel despite her objection and set it on the counter. "Let us find out who you really are. Do not open that without a supervisor present. You are not in charge here." He unfastened the flap and reached inside. Naomi closed her eyes for one brief second, not in defeat, but in restraint. When she opened them, Deputy Lewis stood in the doorway with his hand still on the knob, his face pale. Behind him, Clerk Samuel Reed appeared, breathless, holding a tablet against his chest. "Officer Caldwell," Samuel said, his voice thin but clear. "Chief Judge Ellison is on her way down." Ryan froze with Naomi's credential wallet in his hand. The gold seal was already visible. The gold seal caught the fluorescent light, small and bright in Ryan Caldwell's hand, and for a moment the entire room seemed to hold its breath around it. Deputy Lewis stared at the credential wallet as if it had become heavier than a brick. Samuel Reed stood in the doorway with his tablet pressed against his chest, rain still beaded on the shoulders of his gray coat from the walk between buildings. Ryan looked from the seal to Naomi, then back again, searching for some explanation that would let him remain the man in control. Naomi did not give him one. She sat perfectly still in the plastic chair, wrists together, coat sleeves pushed back just enough to show the red marks the cuffs had left against her skin. The room was cold, but her face was calm. Calm was not emptiness. Calm was labor. It was breath pulled through a tight chest. It was anger folded carefully and placed where it could not burn the wrong thing. She had learned that kind of calm in courtrooms where people interrupted her before she finished a sentence, in elevators where strangers asked if she was lost, in committee meetings where her ideas became useful only after someone else repeated them. Ryan cleared his throat. This does not change the fact that she failed to present identification at the checkpoint. Samuel's fingers tightened around the tablet. "She asked you to verify through the clerk's office. I heard it from the corridor." Lewis looked down. His silence said he had heard it too. Naomi lowered her gaze to the sealed folders on the counter. One page had slipped loose from the stack, the corner bent slightly upward. It bothered her more than the cuffs. That page belonged to someone whose complaint had been ignored for 6 months. A man pulled over 3 times within 10 miles for reasons that changed on every report. A mother detained outside a school pickup line because her license plate was typed wrong by someone else. A teenager questioned in the courthouse lobby because his backpack looked suspicious. Paper could be fragile, but it carried weight. It carried memory. It carried the voices of people who could not afford to be doubted twice. Ryan set the wallet down slowly, as if touching it any longer might confirm what he was trying not to know. Naomi looked at Samuel. "Please make sure every displaced page is collected in order." Her voice was quiet, but the room obeyed it before anyone understood why. Samuel moved carefully to the counter. Lewis stepped forward to help, then stopped, waiting for permission. Naomi gave a small nod. Outside the frosted glass, footsteps approached with a measured rhythm, not hurried, not uncertain. The kind of footsteps that belonged to someone who did not need to announce authority because the building already knew her. Ryan heard them too. His shoulders stiffened. Naomi looked once more at the dark body camera on his chest, then at the hallway camera above the door, its tiny green light steady and awake. She breathed in slowly. She breathed out. The truth had not arrived loudly. It had been recording the whole time. Chief Judge Margaret Ellison opened the door without knocking, and the room changed before she spoke. She was a tall woman in her early 60s with silver hair cut to her jaw and reading glasses hanging from a black cord against her navy suit. Behind her stood 2 internal affairs investigators and the courthouse administrator, all silent, all looking first at the cuffs on Naomi's wrists, then at the sealed files spread across the counter. The tiny green light above the hallway camera blinked steadily over them. Ryan straightened so quickly his chair rolled back and tapped the wall. "Chief Judge Ellison," he said, forcing his voice into formality. "There has been a misunderstanding." Margaret did not look at him. She looked at Naomi, and something in her face tightened with controlled disbelief. "Judge Brooks," she said, low and clear, "are you injured?" The word judge landed harder than a shout. Deputy Lewis looked down at the floor. Samuel Reed closed his eyes for one brief second, as if he had been waiting for reality to catch up with the room. Ryan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Naomi lifted her cuffed wrists slightly. "I am able to proceed, Chief Judge." Margaret turned then, slowly, and looked at Ryan with the stillness of a door closing. "Remove those cuffs." Ryan swallowed. "Your Honor, I did not know she was." "That sentence will not help you," Margaret said. The room went silent except for the vent humming above them. Ryan reached for the key with hands that had lost their certainty. The cuffs came off with a small metallic release, softer than the click that had put them on, but somehow louder. Naomi rubbed one wrist once, then stopped, refusing to give the room the satisfaction of seeing pain become spectacle. Samuel stepped forward and placed her credential wallet back on the counter, gold seal facing up. Margaret gestured to the lead investigator, a calm man named Daniel Price. He opened a folder and set it in front of Ryan. On the cover, typed in black letters, was his name, his badge number, and the words "Pattern Review Hearing." Ryan stared at it, then at Naomi, and understanding finally broke across his face. The woman he had stopped, dismissed, and processed was not only authorized to carry the files. She was the supervising judge assigned to review the complaints against him that afternoon. Daniel Price spoke evenly. "Officer Caldwell, the hallway camera preserved the initial stop. The corridor camera preserved the transport. The processing room camera preserved the moment your body camera went dark." Ryan's eyes shifted to the corner of the room, where the green light kept blinking, patient and merciless. Naomi stood slowly. Her knees felt stiff from the chair, but her voice remained steady. "Please collect every file, verify the order, and seal the evidence log." Margaret nodded once. "The hearing will be moved forward." Ryan looked at Naomi then, not with anger now, but with the stunned fear of a man realizing the rules he bent had been watching him bend them. Naomi picked up the top folder, smoothed its bent corner with her thumb, and said, "The court is ready." By noon, courtroom 4 was filled with the kind of silence that made even breathing feel official. The flag stood motionless beside the bench. The seal of the court glowed above the room in carved wood and gold. Attorneys sat straighter than usual. Clerks moved carefully, as if every paper they touched had suddenly become fragile. Officer Ryan Caldwell stood at the respondent table without his usual ease, his uniform still crisp, his badge still polished, but the confidence around him had thinned into something almost transparent. Naomi Brooks entered through the side door in her black robe, and the entire courtroom rose. No one spoke. No one coughed. Ryan kept his eyes on the floor until the sound of her chair settling behind the bench forced him to look up. For the first time that morning, he saw her as the room saw her, not as a threat passing through a checkpoint, not as a woman he could reduce to suspicion, but as the authority he had been scheduled to answer to before he ever laid eyes on her. Naomi placed the restored stack of files beside the microphone. The bent page had been smoothed, logged, and sealed again. Her credential wallet lay inside the evidence packet, photographed and documented. Her wrists were covered by the sleeves of her robe, but she could still feel the faint ache beneath the fabric. She did not let it enter her voice. Chief Judge Ellison sat in the front row, hands folded over a legal pad. Daniel Price stood near the witness table with a copy of the hallway footage. Samuel Reed sat 2 rows back, pale but steady, ready to testify if called. Naomi looked over the courtroom once, then down at the record before her. "This hearing concerns conduct, procedure, and public trust," she said. "It does not concern wounded pride." Ryan swallowed. His attorney leaned toward him and whispered something, but Ryan shook his head. He stood slowly. "Your Honor," he said, and the title sounded different now, heavy in his mouth. "I would like to apologize. I did not know who you were." A slight movement passed through the courtroom. Not quite a gasp, not quite a sigh. Naomi looked at him for a long moment. Her face held no cruelty. That made it worse for him. "Officer Caldwell," she said, "that is exactly the problem. The law cannot depend on whether you recognize a person as important. Procedure cannot appear only when someone has power. Dignity cannot be issued after identification." Ryan's jaw tightened, but this time it was not defiance. It was shame finding a place to sit. Naomi continued, her voice even, almost gentle. "You were not required to know my title to treat me lawfully. You were required to know your duty." The words settled over the room like dust in sunlight. Ryan lowered his head. Naomi did not smile. She did not raise her voice. She did not punish him with humiliation. She opened the file, turned to the first complaint, and let the record begin. The record did not shout. It unfolded. One complaint at a time, one timestamp at a time, one camera angle at a time. The room watched the pattern become impossible to dismiss. By late afternoon, the winter light outside courtroom 4 had faded from silver to blue, and the courthouse windows reflected the people inside like ghosts pressed against glass. Officer Ryan Caldwell sat lower in his chair than he had when the hearing began. The polish on his badge still caught the light, but it no longer seemed to shine with authority. It looked small against the weight of the testimony. Daniel Price confirmed the preservation of all footage from the morning. Samuel Reed described hearing Naomi ask for verification and watching Ryan ignore it. Deputy Lewis admitted, with his hands folded so tightly his knuckles paled, that he should have spoken sooner. Naomi listened to every word without interruption. She took notes in a steady hand. She asked precise questions. She gave Ryan's attorney every opportunity to respond. No one could say she had used the bench for revenge. That was what made the ending heavier. When the final statement closed, Naomi removed her glasses and looked across the courtroom. Public trust is not damaged only by one large failure, she said. It is damaged by small decisions made repeatedly, especially when those decisions fall hardest on people already forced to prove they belong. The room was still. Ryan looked up then, and for the first time, there was no argument ready on his face. Naomi announced that he would be removed from courthouse duty pending full administrative review, referred for disciplinary proceedings, and required to surrender his access credentials before leaving the building. Her voice remained calm through all of it. Not cold. Clear. Ryan stood when instructed. His hands moved slowly to the badge clipped at his chest. For a second, he seemed to search the room for the man he had been that morning, the man who thought silence meant permission and power meant truth. He did not find him. Daniel Price placed an evidence envelope on the table. Ryan set his access card and courthouse badge inside it. The plastic made a soft sound as it touched the paper, smaller than anyone expected. After adjournment, people left in quiet streams, whispering only after they reached the hallway. Samuel lingered near the door until Naomi stepped down from the bench. "Your Honor," he said, voice low, "I am sorry I froze." Naomi looked at him, tired enough now to let the day show in her eyes. "Next time," she said gently, "do not." He nodded as if she had handed him something heavier than forgiveness. Outside, the courthouse steps were damp from an evening drizzle. Naomi walked alone into the cool air with her satchel over one shoulder and the restored files secured against her side. Her phone buzzed. A message from the hospital glowed on the screen. "Mom is awake and asking for you." For the first time all day, Naomi let out a breath that belonged only to her. Behind her, through the courthouse glass, the evidence envelope lay on a table beneath fluorescent light, holding a badge, an access card, and a dark body camera that had failed to hide what the building had already seen. Naomi did not look back. She descended the stone steps slowly, past the flag moving in the night wind, past the place where she had entered that morning unseen, and into the city where the record, at last, had spoken.